Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Advanced Apple Music. I've had a few people reach out to me about genres. Genres seem to be a bit of an enigma when you're trying to set up your library. So I figured I'd show you a little bit about what works for me. But what I definitely want to do is have you keep in mind that this is going to be a super personal set of decisions. You're definitely going to have to figure out what is important to you and what exactly are you trying to get out of your genres. So I'll just start here with my songs view on the PC. I think this is one of the best ways to get a handle on your genres right off the bat. And at a glance, you can see all of them in your library up here on the top left. So when I first started my genre cleanup project, I made it a goal basically to try and clean up one genre per day, with larger ones split up alphabetically. So basically, I'd click on each genre and go through and just make sure that all songs seem to fit what that genre said. For the larger ones that are like this alternative one, I would basically just try to go through like a few letters per day. So it'd just be like, today I'm going to go through the A's and just make sure all the A's in alternative make sense to me. Then the next day, the B's, sometimes get through a couple of the letters. Some days might take a little bit longer and just stick to one letter, just depending on how long they are. So that's kind of how I scheduled my genre restructuring. And then, offhand, if I just notice that something's wrong, I'll go ahead and change it on the fly. But how the heck did I decide which genres to use and why? So really think that people overthink this in pursuit of perfection. I think that this is something that I completely relate to because I am kind of like a data control freak almost. There are certain circumstances where you're going to want to get very, very nuanced, but I think that in general, what my own way to look at things is that right now I have about 56 genres. I could probably, for all intents and purposes, trim this down to like 30, 35 maybe. I think that it really comes down to how finely tuned do you need to get things displayed to you in other ways. So let me just kind of show a little bit about what that means. Let's take some of my rock categories. I have a whole bunch of different categories, specifically around like indie and indie electronica, indie folk, and things like that. Now, honestly, all of these serve different purposes for me functionally, and I'm going to show you what that looks like in Marvis on the iPad. But I have sections in Marvis organized around these, and some of them will show up in different sections depending on which kind of subgenre is right here. So this indie pop one, these are songs that I need to adjust because this doesn't really, only having two songs in there isn't something that's going to mean anything, from an organizational standpoint. So these will be two that I will change around a little bit later. But some of these can get a little more ambiguous. Now, I have an alternative section, and honestly, it's a little bit hard sometimes as far as how I pinpoint how that's different than my straight up indie section, which is like indie rock. Alternative is more of kind of like a dumping ground for me. In my head, I can feel that indie has a little bit of a softer type sound to it personally. But if I just merged all my indie music in with my alternative music, I don't think that I would even notice a difference based on, how I have my smart playlist set up and things like that. So I think that, I've more or less just left these two separate out of a little bit of laziness, but it's a really good illustration that at the end of the day, if you're not doing something different with two different genres, you can either combine them or do what I do, which is not stress too much about which one your song lands in. So when I do my weekly cleanup, if I throw it in alternative or I throw it in indie, I'm not spending a lot of time trying to figure out which one that is and maybe do, tags in the comments section to make sure that I capture it perfectly. It doesn't really matter, like I'm not really sweating what the right option is at all. Um, Another kind of good example of this is just my dance music section. So dance captures a lot for me. Almost anything that's kind of like EDM style music will fall into this category. I'm sure at one point when I first started, I had house or drum and bass separated out. But at the end of the day, if I'm building a section around dance music, it's going to be pretty rare that I exclude a subgenre for that. And so that's for me, personally, there's no point in separating out those different types of dance music. And I really think that's a good example of how you should view genres. Can you think of a situation where, one of your smart playlists or your sections would only want one subgenre of songs? And for me, I think a good example of that would be indie folk. So I have like a lot of this like mountain style music, and I love sometimes this is the exact sound I want. So I have sections set up around this. I have song mixes in Marvis. I have have it broken out. So for me to break this off from the larger alternative or indie category, that makes sense. It's used frequently. For other people, maybe you just have like 30 or 40 songs in here, and you just don't care if the only time you ever hear that is when you're listening to just a straight up alternative station or something like that. Then it makes sense just roll it right in, and don't separate out that as a subgenre. Finally here, on the computer, what I'm going to do is just take a look at some of those subgenre playlist backbones that I have set up. And we'll just kind of see a little bit about how I have things broken down. I have all my genres in a folder right here. And some of these are smart playlists, and some of them are just straight up playlists that I've made myself. So some of these like mountain bike flow and chill Christmas and things like that, I don't need a smart playlist because I just made those once, and I'm probably not gonna, then there's no way to capture what fits into some of those. So these ones down here are all handmade ones that, a genre isn't gonna really be able to just automatically pull it in. Now these ones are where I use the genre tag, and so I've got alternative, I've got blues and garage rock, which combines my blues rock with indie rock. So I do feel a little bit of a difference in vibe there, and I have those two kind of end up in different spots sometimes. So this combines those two. Classic rock takes anything from like 60s music to your normal classic rock. So those types of things, and combines anything that's oldies and classic all together in one. I've got classical and jazz, which I don't have a ton of music, but combine those two into one right there. Heavy is going to combine metal, hard rock, and other things. And again, if I just made the genre heavy, it would probably work for me in 90% of situations. Honestly, it's more laziness that, or the very occasional time where I'm like, I want to see what I have going on for hard rock versus like more of a metal sound. So same goes for hip hop and rap. I combine the two in here, but I have those two are pretty much my only kind of hip hop slash rap style genre tags. Latin and world, I think, is kind of an interesting one. So this one I is another good example where I just kind of combine anything Latin is going to wind up under this. If I were some kind of a salsa teacher or something, maybe I would want to separate out salsa music from just any other type of Latin music. But for me, I'm totally fine with that. Combine it all. Similarly for world, I pretty much throw anything that sounds like it's from some kind of more exotic country in here into this category of world. I don't bother to separate it out, whether it's from Argentina or somewhere in Africa. It's just world, and that works for me. There's just not enough of a reason to get nuanced with it. I've got Espanol in here too, and that's there's a genre I listen to quite a bit called rock en español, and that one I do have separated out. And there are times where I'll bump into that and want to listen to some stuff from there. So um, then for pop and dance, again, pretty straightforward. It's those two things combined. Got one set up just for punk, which I do have separated out by pop punk as well as just regular punk. But again, that's it. I don't have hardcore punk. I don't have classic punk. I don't have anything like that. It's just dump it all together, except for separating out more of the poppy stuff from the a little bit more raw stuff. Reggae is super straightforward, and then in my yoga-ish smart playlist, I've mixed up electronica and down tempo. So this is kind of like chill electronic beats that I've kind of wrapped up here. So that's a little bit about what I do on my computer and kind of what my philosophy is on genres. Now what I'd like to do is just jump over to my iPad and show a little bit about what's going on over there. All right, wrapping things back up in Marvis here. So I actually set up a section, or a home, I should say, for my own personal genres using those playlists we just looked at. Almost all of them are exactly the same, except that some of the larger genres have a bonus radio station or two in there because they just have so much music to work with. It's easier for me to kind of specify I want something I haven't listened to in a long time or things like that. Let's take a look at my Latin slash world genre home, and I can show you how I have most of these set up. So the first section is just a straight up last 50 songs that I've added that are in that playlist, which captures all of those genres. So if I just want to quickly, jump into my last 50 songs of a particular genre, there it is right at top, and I can hold down on that last 50 and I can shuffle it using the little button on the top left right there. I've got a section that's just all of the songs that are loved, which would mean 3 stars or higher, just shuffled with no particular rules whatsoever. So doesn't matter if I listened to it this morning or if I've never listened to it before. If it's loved and it's a part of those genres, it'll mix it all up and throw it right in there. Taking a look at world radio. So in this one, I actually have it mix the playlist that I have with some from Apple Music. So I take these 3 I've found that are kind of have that same vibe that I'm looking for, and I shuffle them up and mix them in with all of these rules that I have set up around that Found Sounds Latin/world playlist that I showed you on the computer. And I've shown you on a previous video about how to set up a radio station like that. So if this is something new to you, feel free to check that out. And if you have any questions, obviously, just drop a note in the comments. More than happy to help you. Next up, I have a section of my top rated albums right here. So just straight up rate the albums and have them sorted by that. This one's more of just like sometimes I like to see what my top play counted songs are, so I can see what are the songs that I played the most. And this is Buena Vista Social Club back in like 2011. I played the heck out of it, but it kind of pales in comparison now to some of the other genres that I listen to quite a bit. You can see some of the highest rated artists on there, and then I like to, in each one of these genres, have a downloaded section where I basically just take a shuffled mix of all of the loved songs that I have, so rating greater or equal than 3, and then have local only set up on this cloud filter right here, and that just kind of takes it all and makes it so that no matter where I am, I can easily listen to that genre if I want to. So I've got this set up for, all of my big genres, and really happy with where all this has landed. Be curious to know if anyone out there is doing something super interesting with, genres on your end. What did you do differently that works really well for you? Did this video hurt your soul thinking about eliminating a bunch of genres that you use? Let me know down below, and I'd be happy to start a conversation about it, because I do think it is one of those really difficult things sometimes to wrap your mind around as you're getting started, to clean up your library of, does this genre work for me? Does it have some sort of purpose or not? And, there's no right way for anybody. It's all kind of up to you and what you plan to use it for. So let me know if you need anything or have any questions down below, but hope everybody has a great rest of your week.